Minding Your Business community, thank you so much for coming back. Another great episode of the Minding Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Champ Ron, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. Boy, as the world flipped on its head, to say the least. Man, just when we thought we were dealing only with COVID-19 and the coronavirus and socially distancing and quarantining, now we have what has been a very robust, very impactful, very influential civil rights movement that has grown here over the last several days, that's been triggered, unfortunately, due to the murder of George Floyd by a police officer in Minneapolis, Minnesota, here recently, and that's triggered some very emotional protests and things like that. Often peaceful, some not so peaceful, but we'll get into that today. But I'm very excited about today's guest, Justin Winter, who is the founder and CEO of Boostopia, that I want you all, MYB, to go check out at boostopia.com. So it's boostopia.com. It will be in the show notes that you'll be able to check out. Of course, subscribe to the podcast, 5-star on Apple. Helps us be able to continue to expand our reach with our content to many of you, the lifestyle entrepreneur, lifestyle business owner, the workforce professional, and many of you that listen to this podcast. But Justin Winter is our guest today. So Justin joins us from Durham, North Carolina. And so we're excited to have him on, man. Justin, how you doing? And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Ron. I'm excited to hang out today and chat some business and chat life. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yep. Excellent. No doubt about it. Just I guess before we kind of get started into the interview and kind of learning more about yourself and about Boostopia, which we definitely want to get into, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't give you an opportunity to kind of share some of your thoughts on what's going on as someone that is a white male that's there in Durham, North Carolina. I'm sure, the audience would love to hear kind of, your thoughts on, kind of what's going on and, if it's been any impact to you, kind of directly and that sort of thing. Just, any thoughts you'd like to share, I'd like to open the floor for you.
Yeah, no, thanks for that opportunity, Ron. I really appreciate it. I mean, there's no doubt that we are, living in a time right now, just, this week, last week, the week before, of something I think that's our children will learn about in the history books as a pivotal point for our society. And I think for me personally, it's been painful and hard to see my brothers and sisters of color just see how things like this affect them,
Mm-hmm.
and just really what this brings to the forefront. Kind of this culmination of of their lived experience, right?
Yeah.
This in these one or two these big high profile tragedies like this. So for me, I would say my journey in this area is a white dude, right?
Right.
My parents were white. I was actually adopted as an infant from my biological mother,
Yeah.
but my parents are white, so even though I'm actually significantly taller than them, I lived in a monoculture, right? And most of the
Right.
I grew up in first West Palm Beach, Florida, and then Richmond, Virginia. I
Yeah.
went to a Christian private school that was overwhelmingly white in Florida, and then a public school in Richmond, Virginia that was predominantly white. And then I went to a Christian university, which was predominantly white, and married my college sweetheart, Amanda, and we
Yeah.
moved down here to North Carolina when she was getting her master's in counseling. And for us, we've lived in downtown Durham here for a while now and had this opportunity, particularly over the last 6 or 7 years, to really diversify our dinner table, right?
There you
Like
go.
not just this like I got a black friend thing,
Right. Right. Right.
but like actually just get to know people who are different than us in genuine relationships, right? A
Of
big part of
course.
that from the church community we're involved in, and kind of the small groups where we'll kind of have Bible study in our house every week, and in kind of walking with people um, with very different backgrounds that have very different events in their life because of how much melanin they got going on, right?
Hmm.
uh, it's been very eye-opening, and it set my wife and I kind of on a journey to be more intentional about educating ourselves, listening well. I kind of jokingly say, like, I'm a recovering Republican.
Right.
Not that if you're a Republican that there's a problem with that necessarily, but like I think I just grew up with, like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, just
Sure.
kind of not question beliefs about life and work, and uh, you know, uh, you know, low income areas, or people without a lot of means, and
Right.
super supportive environment growing up, and I never, thankfully, was exposed to a cult, like a family environment or cultures which were like overtly um, like in any of these areas. And I know a lot of people are, but it was
Right.
just race was just something that was never talked about, right? And it's kind of I really love this term I'm seeing recently about it's not enough to not be a racist, right?
Right.
About being anti-racist, right? And
Right.
it's this different philosophy of like seeking justice and equity on the behalf of others, even when it doesn't benefit yourself. And for me, my personal faith and my beliefs are heavily motivating for me to want to seek the wellness of other people and not
Right.
just my own self. So yeah, so I've been past couple years kind of going through this journey, trying to continue my learning path, figure out what opportunities I have with the platforms that I've been given and the privilege that
Right.
I have to advocate well, whether it's in the work environment, whether it's being a little outspoken on, my Facebook page,
Yeah.
ruffling some feathers of some people I grew up with or whatever who
Sure.
are confused by some of the things that I'm saying. So, my prayers are with everyone who's obviously very more kind of directly affected by these things and what it means for their family and everything.
Right.
Uh, but Durham has had, thankfully, peaceful protests. Raleigh's been a little bit more rough. There's been some challenges there, and
Sure.
past the whole 9 yards. It's not as bad as we haven't had buildings on fire kind of level.
Yeah.
But my wife was able to participate in one of the peaceful protests a couple of days ago, and so we're just trying to walk well, like lament these tragedies well, be there for our community, and trying to figure out what our role is, and just loving people well.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, thank you so much, one, for, your courage and sharing that, my man.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's something that I think, this country has needed for some time, is for, for white America to speak out against, overtly against, like you said, this is not racial in the sense of a race against another race. This is everyone against racism,
yeah,
right? And the culture of fear and hate that breeds in these racist acts that take place, and how we can all band together. And I know you and I spoke a little bit offline about, I shared with you, again, there's three areas that we all, no matter where we're from, what walk of life, what side of the tracks, what we look like in the mirror, there's three areas that we all want to be great at, which is we want to do a little better for ourselves, a little better for our families, and a little better for our community. And then that last one, that community, incorporates all of us. Even though we all may have, our various differences and things like that, we have to get past, like you were mentioning, being, yeah, I think in the country over the last several decades, we've become so ingrained with either being Democrat or Republican, or being this or being that. And we forgot to be human,
right,
right? And I think this is an awakening of what's going on that's going to help us hopefully get back, if we can transition from the step of awareness and peaceful protest. And again, even when there's not so much peaceful protest, because you have people that are very angry, um, and you've expressed the anger over that. I've expressed anger over what took place in Minneapolis, and not just that, but all the atrocities that have taken place throughout American history. But now's the time, and if we can all work together to determine what it is that we want and what we want to take to the next level in terms of how do you fight fear and hate, You can't just totally legislate that. That is a culture,
Yeah.
right? And that's a culture at times of previous generations that's just been perpetuated throughout time. And so to eradicate a culture takes leadership, and it takes community. And
Yep.
I think we're seeing an awakening of that now. And so, again, I appreciate your comments and what you're doing there in your community to breed positivity and shed life. And like you say, have those tough conversations that a lot of times households don't like to have. Is that race conversation and the conversation about racism, and as we all have that and explore that personally, and then expand that to our communities, it's only going to help us be better down the line if we continue not just the conversation, but again, begin demanding from our leadership and then from ourselves. What is it that we want? What kind of community do we want? And when we see each other and we come across each other, we respect and understand differences, but in that respect and understanding, that it's not reared in fear and hatred,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And again, that takes time because that's cultural. But these
Yes.
type of conversations like you and I are having, um, which we may not have had had we been doing this interview a month ago or
Right.
6 months ago or a year ago, right? So it's good that we're having these conversations on this platform, and that sort of thing, and like you say, the courage that it takes to do so. So man, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into about you, because and your business has a nice unique tie-in with these times, as we've had these quarantine, socially distant times that have come about in the last say 70 to 90 days, and that sort of thing, and specifically what your business does to help this very conversation that we've been having, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But first, let's learn a little bit about Justin Winter. So tell us, you shared a lot of, in your initial comments about yourself, but, share some more about yourself and kind of, how you've grown, kind of professionally.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, I mean, I think for me, like I would say to give some color on, uh, my weaknesses as well as some of the things I've been, fortunate enough to having stumbled into and have, a relative degree of success in.
Right.
Uh, I was a super bad student in school, right? Like, just get that out there. I remember, like, I was in fifth grade,
Yeah.
and uh, I would literally read a book a day
Yeah.
during school hours. So
Okay.
in class, like while they were doing whatever they were doing, I was sitting there like I was like sneaking Star Wars and Hardy Boys and stuff, right? Because I was way more entertained by that. It kept my attention, right? So
Right.
I was kind of the one who like I was always like a B and C student kind of deal,
Sure.
and I think pretty early on, and I don't know how it quite got there, but I think because I didn't I didn't identify with like the straight A plus kids who are like, man, I want to be a doctor or like do some big thing where like the smart people would do. I was like,
Right.
and I'm gonna be a business person because it's not about like getting the best grades. It's about like the hustle of it, right? So really quickly that became part of kind of my identity, I guess. And I was interested in those things. And one of the so my first job was at McDonald's. I was rocking that drive-through, right? That was my game for a year. And I basically always had a job. As soon as I could have a job, I was fortunate enough to have a mother who stayed at home who could help me get to McDonald's, hop in the car and do that. Every Saturday morning, 7 a.m. Getting going for breakfast. But from there, a couple jobs through school. Like the next kind of big thing that I had was I started selling Cutco knives right after high school. Between high school and that first year, going and getting my undergrad degree, or working towards that at least. And Cutco, if your audience is familiar with it, it's this weird company that basically hires college kids to do these little demos inside of people's homes. And I mean, it's super expensive stuff, right? So it's like a $80 paring knife, $125 pair of scissors. Now,
Right.
this is awesome, right? Like it is really really nice, and it's worth it. But it's like it's like buying like a really nice jacket or something that is going to last you a decade. It's like you're not just going to do that on a whim. But when
Right.
you're in a place when you got a couple extra dollars, you're like, you know what? I'm going to put some more money down because I know I'll save money in the future and it's higher quality, right? So I did that, man. That first summer was pretty brutal. The majority of the summer, I mean, I sucked. Like I was so
Right.
bad. Like
Right. Right.
I kept showing up, right? I showed up to the meetings. I did what I was supposed to do, but you're basically cold calling your parents' friends and people you went to high school with, like adults and stuff, and trying to somewhat guilt trip them into
Right.
in their house to show you this stuff. So I remember it came down. There was this real big push at the end of the summer, and it was kind of this big make it or break it kind of thing. And like I was pretty discouraged. I wasn't making much money. It's kind of like a commission only kind of deal. And it was like, okay, like is this 10-day period where like the goal was you had to sell $1,000 a day, and I had sold like $1,000 in like 3 months. So
Wow.
it was like this huge thing, and I kind of hit this moment where it's like, you know what, if it's ever gonna happen, like I got to do it now, right? Or else I need to go do something else. I need to get a different road for me.
Right.
So I kind of buckled up. I mean, I worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, just like nonstop. And I was in my $1,800 Honda Civic that I had bought, right? Like we didn't have
Right.
GPS back in the day, right?
Right.
This
Of
was
course.
I don't know. This is like 2005 or like
Right.
2000. So I'd go to MapQuest, right, and
Right.
print them out
Right. You print it off and then you take it. Right.
exactly, and I'd have like 8 appointments in a day, and so I'd be
Right. Right.
all these papers, try not to be late. And I ended up doing like 10,000, like 400 and something dollars, right? And it was just like, oh, it was like my first big success. And so that
Right.
was motivating, kind of affirming that what, I wasn't the smartest kid. I was, I wasn't the best looking kid, like, whatever, dimension you want to look at it. But, I
Right.
put the work and I showed up, right?
There you go.
I just kept getting a little better day in and day out. So that was a super formative experience, and kind of all that sales training I had over the course of a couple of years kind of set the foundation. And then to kind of wrap it up, I think like I was just always enamored with technology and computers and everything. I was never like a software engineer, or never really played with code that didn't interest me, but like the
Yeah.
marketing side of it, I was always picking up a hustle. I remember my first in college, I would put up ads on Craigslist that I could build websites, even though I had no idea how to build a website, right?
Right.
But like, I knew enough to know, like, if someone decided to pay me for it, well, I'd figure
You
it out.
learn and figure it out. Right.
Exactly. So that's what I did. And the first job I got, he was a pastor at a Church of God church,
Yeah.
a church. If your audience is familiar, right, with all the purple and everything, right?
Right.
And
Right.
they're like, man, we got $300. Can you make us a website? And I was like, $300. I was through the roof, right?
Right.
Have to be doing manual labor, or or going to someone's home trying to sell a paring knife. So
Right.
that kind of got me on this path of like, man, if I can figure out this internet thing, I think my ADD brain just really loved that. And
Right.
I studied marketing in school, did a minor in biblical studies at the Christian college that I went to. I didn't actually technically graduate. I was a few credits short, so I didn't even graduate college. So if you're listening to this and you're in that seat, it ended up working out okay for me. So don't be discouraged by that.
Right.
But yeah, so that's kind of my formative experiences that I had that kind of led me to, starting to work full time, right, and get into a lot of the stuff that's led me to where I am now.
Yeah, no doubt. Actually, a lot to unpack from that, Justin. But a couple things that stood out to me was one, and I've had this same story, and I've expressed this same story numerous times on this podcast through a myriad of episodes, which is you don't always have to be the best of, like you say, the best student, the best, with the most capital and the best looking and that sort of thing. A lot of success comes from you're the guy or girl that shows up, that's there, that's willing to be present, that's
Yeah.
and is humble enough to know you don't have all the answers, but tenacious enough to go and get them, right?
That's
And
right.
be
Yeah.
willing to take some kind of calculated risk
Yeah.
to be successful. And so that's a lot of what I heard in your story was, here's a guy that when it comes down to it, he wants to put himself in position to then be successful by being present and being, whereas a lot of people have great talents and things like that, but at the end of the day, when it comes time to go, they won't go.
Right.
um, any barrier or any excuse gets in the way, and it keeps them from being present. And so I've had that in my career where some things have just been when people ask me, it's just been I was there. Even with
Yeah.
this podcast, right? There's been many podcasters that have had great ideas, have better formats, maybe better content.
Right.
They have big sexy studios and things like that.
Yeah.
But they haven't done near the number of episodes that I've done,
Right.
or near the reach. And listen, my background's in economics and stuff. I don't have a communications background.
Yeah.
My mom shared with me, like I said, my kindergarten teacher told her that I would not have the capacity to learn. um, I was tongue tied, and she said I wouldn't speak well, and I'd have to, be in these different classes and things like that. And my mom said, no, the hell with that. He can
Right.
learn just like everybody else. And her standing up with that, helped me just, throughout my whole life. And so, yeah, it's just been, doing this for 3 years. It's just been, like you said, um, it's been about, I just continue to do it where others have given up, or won't launch their
Or didn't
podcast.
even,
Right.
yeah, they're just listening to some Gary V Instagram quote and getting hyped up, but they never pull the trigger to do anything, right? So like
Right.
going from just being, the majority of people will never do anything, they'll listen to it, but just taking that first step to be like, you know what, screw it, like I'm just gonna start a podcast. Do I know what I'm doing? No, but I'm confident in my ability to figure it out, and then I'm
Right.
just gonna keep showing up day in and day out. And then all of a sudden, like, you have people like me wanting to be on your show because you got this audience, right? And
Yeah.
you got tons of this awesome stuff going on.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely, no doubt about it. And so, Justin, let's get into, so you told us a lot about yourself. So, where does Boostopia come from? First, what is Boostopia,
yeah,
and how does it, walk through kind of the birth of in those early days?
yeah, definitely. So Boostopia was born out of my first company and really my first kind of major experience. So I'd started a candle company, actually a home fragrance company that sold candles online. And
Okay.
so I did that for about 5 years. It was really a side project kind of thing.
Did
At
you
the
manufacture them, or were you more
So
reselling,
both.
or?
So we manufactured them, and we had a website, all like e-commerce style, direct to
Sure.
consumer. Like we were on Shopify before it was cool, right? Trying to sell stuff. So the unique thing about the company was that one of my partners had invented this concept of putting a ring down inside of a candle, and it would be worth at least $10, but it could be worth up to $5,000. So it was kind of random, so you didn't really know what you were going to get. But it was still like a nice quality candle that someone would buy as like a gift or something like that. So in the first year, we ended up figuring stuff out, and a lot of it in spite of ourselves because we didn't know what we were doing. But
Right.
we sold $1 million in revenue in the first 12 months, and then we did 5 million, then 15, then $22 million in the fourth year. So it was just this crazy wild ride. It was kind of my DIY MBA, my first real kind of thing. And being the CEO, I got to experience a lot of those different growing pains and make
Sure.
those decisions and build a team and everything. And to speak to where Boostopia came from, at the candle company, one of the hardest parts about growing the business was the customer support operation. So I was the first support agent myself. And then
Sure.
I hired our first support team member. And then pretty quickly we had 5 people. And then at peak season, by that final year, we'd have like 20 support team members around the holidays when it was like peak buying season. So it was really challenging, even though we used like customer support software, like ticketing systems and stuff to do the emails and support like phone systems and chat systems. It was really difficult to understand why customers were reaching out to us. So it was almost the entire department was like this big black box, like what's happening in here? Like I can't see, I don't understand. So because of that, we didn't really know where we could improve, how we could be improving the team, how we could
Right.
be improving the individual team members to be coaching them, and we didn't know how we could improve the experience that our customers had with us, so
Yeah.
we could figure out how to maybe take this support department and have them sell more stuff, right? That'd be good. So because of that, and I talked to a lot of other folks at friends I had started to meet at different companies, and customer support was the same thing, right? It was like the department in the back of the office
Wow.
that was the lowest paid job and super repetitive. Customers cussing at you sometimes, right? And we ended up realizing that what we were missing was the tools for the managers to do their job inside of the support department.
Okay.
So we started looking around. It's like, man, there's got to be some software or something for the support managers to do their job of understanding what's happening and improving all of these things. So we
Right.
started looking around, and then we ended up finding the software category called contact center workforce management. and
Yeah.
and basically it's a mouthful because, man, you got to have like hundreds or even thousands of people in your support department. You have to sign like 3-year contracts, and you have to have MBAs and data analysts using the software because it's so complex and hard to use
Yeah.
that the stuff looks like it was made in 95, right? It's like just super horrible. So it's like, okay, well, that's not going to work. But what they're doing, man, a company that literally just has one support agent, they could use those tools because the cost of a second full-time support team member, that's a lot of money, right?
Of
And that's
course. Yeah.
company to keep in the company to help growing things, right? And so that's kind of what set us on this track to build Boostopia as really having this system that would work with the customer support ticketing systems and phone systems and chat systems. It would plug in
Yeah.
to that software people are already using, that the agents, the individual team members live in to do their job. We wanted to build the tools for the managers to do their job. And what that means is that you're getting less repetitive support volume that's kind of wasting your team's time. Silly questions like, if it's an e-commerce company, like, how much is shipping? Well,
Right.
gosh, like they could have found that on the website in the FAQs, but they were lazy and they decided to email us instead, right? So you're getting rid of all that kind of mess.
Right.
So on average, companies were able to help them decrease that support volume where it's not helpful conversations by about 30%.
Yeah.
And then in better engaging those team members that you have and helping them be more productive, we can help your team be 20% faster and 20% more productive. And then all that ends up meaning that we can take this cost center of having all these full-time support people
Yeah.
and have them better treat your customers in a way that actually helps you make more money,
Right.
not just having support being this cost center where it's the lowest paid thing in the room. So
Yeah.
so that's kind of the evolution that's led to Boostopia, to build these tools for support managers to optimize their team and engage, their team and their employees, that they have, so they can, serve the customers better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Justin, it leads me to kind of a scenario and then a question because, in when I was in the workforce, my last job was at a credit union where I led a 10 branch retail network that included a 20-seat call center here in
Okay.
Memphis, Tennessee. And
Mhm.
so, one of the tasks that we were able to begin achieving was converting that call center into a profit center.
Yep.
So that what you just explained was exactly what we were looking to do. We were looking at how does the call center, which it typically just receives either
Right.
complaints or requests to transfer money, things that
Right.
don't don't generate anything for the company.
Right.
But then, like you say, we're paying salary and benefit there.
Right.
So, how do we do that? And, how do we do that in a way that allows for upward mobility of those folks?
Yes.
So that
Yep.
creates career pathways
Mhm.
that allow for people that show improve, per se,
Yep.
to go to next levels, whether it's within that profit center or beyond. And so, I began referring to it as our 11th branch.
Mhm.
And we developed, some folks that we trained and cross-trained to be able to position products and services as we were getting either technical, questions or things like that. So we had this team that did, lending, they did positioning and training. They're able to remote in and share how to use online banking and things like that. how you can best trust it, how you can make sure it's secure, how here's some different things you can do in bank. Because a lot of times, with credit unions and banks, they were just really bad at throwing online banking out there and saying, oh, you can see your account 24 hours a day, and it's like, well, okay, great, but again, what else does it do for me,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we were largely successful in doing that, but
Mhm.
we didn't have a partner like you guys to help us create efficiencies in doing that. So a lot of what we did was kind of this trial and error type of thing. Some things worked, some things didn't. It would have been great to have had you guys around with that, to say the least. But
Oh, man, I love that.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, my question is, what are the type of companies that you guys work for, in terms of size, industry, kind of what they do that, Boostopia works best for?
Yeah, yeah. So, we have, well, most of our customers today uh, are e-commerce companies that sell some type of physical product online to customers, and that's mostly just a product of, me and my other co-founders. Three of the four of us, we all worked together before at the candle company, so a lot of our
Yeah.
network, those types of companies. But really, we are agnostic in terms of the type of company that support department works in. So we don't have any banking customers yet, but like we totally could. Um,
Yeah.
so we have software companies, consumer technology, marketplace type stuff, basically anything and everything is kind of who we can help. So we have companies who are as small as, they got a founder right now who, maybe is having to kind of take up an hour or two of their day,
Right.
having to mess around with customer support conversations themselves. And they're feeling that
Sure.
pressure to figure out, man, I know I need to be spending my time on building activities, not maintenance activities.
Yes.
But, hey, I only got so much cash in the bank. It doesn't make sense to hire a full-time support person yet.
Right.
So maybe I'm kind of stuck. What can I do? Right. So we have some companies who start with us at that level because even though we're a software company, our kind of service add-ons are built specifically for companies who are too small to have a full-time support manager. So our support coaches and our support analysts that can kind of be add-ons to the tools that we have, and they're built for companies that, hey, you got one support person or you got a half of a support person, and you need to start getting those best practices today so you don't have to spend more money than you need to. I love the way that you kind of phrased it, Ron, and I did a bad job of articulating this, but like, um, one of the exciting things we're seeing is, so being a support agent, right?
Yeah.
It's the reason, in our opinion, that it is a hard, unfulfilling, low recognition, and low paying job
Hmm.
is because companies aren't able to see and understand how the performance of different team members actually makes them more money or saves them more money.
Of
So
course.
it's actually this visibility challenge, right? So if a team is able to say, okay, I got 5 team members, I got, you know, uh, Tyson and Alexis and, John and Sarah, right?
Right.
And everyone has to have a conversation with our customers about, how do I exchange my product, let's say, right? Well, all 4 of those team members are having those conversations with different degrees of quality, following the processes they're supposed to, and different degrees of efficiency or time, right? So you
Right.
could have Alexis, who's over here knocking those suckers out in 2 minutes and keeping people happy, right? But you got Sarah over here who's taking 20 minutes, right? Right now, today, managers, they can't see that information. So there's no, so Alexis isn't being recognized for being awesome, right? And if companies could see, wait, if Alexis does everything in half the time as everyone else, and we're paying her the same,
Right.
like we could afford to literally pay her double, because if we had to hire someone else who's performing like everyone else, we would need 2 more people, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So all of a sudden you open up just the natural incentives of capitalism and the incentives a business has to
Right.
continue to make things more efficient and make more money. So if you unlock that, what we're seeing is that at the companies we're working with, those support team members are, and we say the word engagement to kind of like be this all-encompassing term, but they're
Right.
feeling more engaged because they're feeling more motivated. They can see how they perform. They're more motivated because it's not this top-down manager situation. It's this bottoms-up coaching, right?
Right.
I can see that I'm number one compared to my other team members. Man, so I want to stay at the top, right?
Right.
And then the managers, are incentivizing people to hit those new goals and offering rewards and bonuses and things like that, right? So
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, like we're seeing where the cream of the crop, right? That everyone knows they're awesome, which makes the job better because like you're killing it, right? You're not
Right.
just you don't put in that hard work, but then you're treated like everybody else,
Yeah.
right? And then like slowly over time, we're seeing where people are getting pay raises and they're making
Hmm.
money. So our big thing when you look at the customer, like the call center industry, whether that's a 2-person company or a 2,000-person company,
Right.
one of our big like missions that we think is super exciting just at a societal level is, what if we could, help companies let software do what software is good at, but unlock the potential of all these very, very skilled people in these jobs and honestly help them make 50 to 100% more in their job. Like what would that impact be in their communities, in their families, and in their careers, right? So that is one of the big motivating factors, even just for me personally, about that opportunity to, help lift so many people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, but
Exactly.
no, but like if we can accomplish our mission at any level, man, then we're gonna be able to have such a big impact, and that's one of the things that's just exciting for us.
Yeah, and that's where a couple of things to unpack with that, Justin, is this. One, you talked about the visibility concern that leadership has, and this is something that I fought with a good bit. When I was in that particular role, one of the things that helped with the success was I had been groomed up, right? So I had gone through each level of the organization.
Understood.
So
Yeah.
um, it versus someone who just walked in out of say MBA school, who had never been, in the instance of banking, had never been a teller, had never been at the sales desk, had never been face to face with customers or members or any of that in the organization. So they don't have that appreciation, that experience. So everything at that level is just theory. And again, this goes back to what you and I talked about kind of initially. There are, in some cases, there's a profile of person that's at the entry level. They tend to be younger. They tend to be more people of color a lot of times, especially depending on the size and scope of the organization. And so there's a disconnect, right, between leadership, who oftentimes would be older. You tend to have more white males, things like that in leadership, versus you might have more of a female population that's black or brown in your support center, right? So you've got this cultural disconnect that already exists, and then there's views both ways, up and down, on how they view each other.
Yeah.
And so that can cloud then when business decisions are being made,
Mhm.
because leadership only sees cost.
Yeah.
and
They
and
only
these
see
aren't
what
people.
they can see. So if they
Right.
can see more,
Yeah.
the
Well, and
offer.
that's where, where again, where I had success, one, there was less of a cultural divide. Two, I had done the role. So one, I couldn't be BS'd.
Right. Yeah.
Two, I could also knew where the challenges were.
Right.
Right. And so then, like you talked about, being able to finding out what motivates them, which different things motivate different people,
Mhm.
creating kind of, like you say, this incentive program that
Mhm.
made sense, that paid for itself,
Right.
because it was based off of revenue. So we
Right.
reached a certain revenue goal. There was a certain payout, but
Mhm.
then other benefits beyond just the money payouts
Right.
quarterly. Things like time off. People, some like public recognition. Some don't really like that or care for that.
Right.
Things down to having lunches catered in, breakfast catered in,
Yeah.
support on Saturdays, time off, all these different things were kind of put into this gumbo of support for them,
Yeah.
that
That's cool.
led to, like you say, a higher morale. And like I said, the big thing was, like you mentioned, coaching. So something like you say, this coaching and development culture
Mhm.
comes into play. that when people come on board, there's, management, is having these one-on-ones with them. They're learning about, um, things beyond the business, not to pry into their personal life, but, um,
Yeah.
do you feel supported here?
They
What
can
other
feel
training?
free to be their whole self, right?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. And that's where it's a one-on-one confidential conversation,
Yeah.
that still is documented for follow-up,
Yeah.
but not in every detail and things like that. And so, um, so from that, again, you're able to create that culture. So it sounds like Boostopia helps companies then develop, or in some way shift their thinking, that
Yeah.
helps shift their culture, that allows then, again, what would normally be viewed as just a call center, right? This just the
Right.
cost of doing business. We got to have these 20 people. Someone's got to answer the phone. Why not these folks?
Right.
And then we try to balance that with our sales team versus integrating them together,
Mhm.
which is what we were doing, was integrating them together to where, it becomes a profit center that is no different than the branches, right? And
Yeah.
so then what happened was, Justin, in this scenario, people were able to then promote from the, say the support center into sales roles and into,
Right.
more front facing roles, and then eventually into management, because then
Right.
they're getting in this
They're on
coaching and
the path
development.
for the top performers.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. And then they're motivated. That confidence, the success breeds confidence, right?
That's right.
And when
That's
you've
right.
got trust and confidence, those
Hmm.
two things, that's how we do business together. That's how
Right.
people work for you. Is if they have trust and confidence in what's going on, they'll enjoy coming there. They're going to tell other people about it.
Hmm.
And when they are seeing, like you say, pay raises and opportunities to continue to grow,
Hmm.
then that just has such a positive effect on your organization. And so
Hmm.
I think, even in these times that we're living in, Justin,
Hmm.
that's just so critical to the future of business. And so it leads me to a question for you.
Hmm.
Um, Walk me through Boostopia pre-pandemic, right? So you got
Yep.
this time, that we're kind of blowing and going along, kind of pre-pandemic.
Right.
All of a sudden, if any of us had put on our 2020 planner January 1st, that, oh, you know what, we're going to have,
Yeah. Just
riots in the street. We're going to have race riots over, a murder of a black citizen, and we're going to have a worldwide health pandemic, right? So that's crazy. January 1st.
put them on the list. Yeah.
Walk me through pre-pandemic Boostopia and then current pandemic Boostopia, kind of compare and contrast what you guys were doing and kind of what you're doing now.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, yes, definitely threw us for a loop. Our website as it exists today, which we launched our first kind of software product back kind of end of the calendar year, and so we
Yeah.
had been working on an updated website that better articulated what we had more recently built and our vision and kind of what we're doing. So that launched, I think it was like 2 weeks before quarantine. So it definitely kind of threw a wrench in the works with kind of some of our marketing and promotional plans to kind of come out to the world and say, hey, everyone, like, here's what we're doing. Here's how we can help you. So that definitely was challenging. We definitely had a challenging couple weeks there, those first couple weeks. So we're still a comparatively small organization. We just have 5 full-time team members right now.
Okay.
My wife and I are the only two that don't have children yet. So,
Yeah.
and everyone else, their kids are, under the age of 10. And our head of engineering has 4 children under the age of 10. So, just them having to now work from home with all these other distractions was super hard. And
Right.
it definitely because a lot of our customers right now are e-commerce companies, a lot of them had really, really difficult sales weeks for, when everything kind of shut down. So we
Yeah.
definitely got a lot of emails and had to hop on the phone a lot with companies who were genuinely in crisis. And, because they shared with us, hey, if this low level of sales we're having continues for a couple more weeks, we'll literally go bankrupt. Right now,
Wow.
thankfully, I think what ended up happening as we look back now is that for a couple weeks there, the whole country was just figuring out how to do life from home. If they were in the privileged position of being able to work at home, of course.
Sure.
Uh, but But I think once that happened, and people couldn't be eating out anymore, if that was something they regularly did, they couldn't be shopping anymore. Then for people who uh, you know, thankfully, didn't have to go through the challenge of losing their income. They were still kind of making the same amount of money. So
Right.
we saw sales pick up, and a lot of people are back to normal now. It's obviously some people, if you've just seen generally in the news, a lot of different types of e-commerce verticals and categories have been doing much better, because of the pandemic. So
Yeah.
uh, for us, I think if anything, it's just adjusted, how we're talking to customers and just making our solution relevant for some of the new problems that they have that they didn't have before.
Yeah.
I talked to a company recently. They have 6 full-time team members, and they had never worked from home before. And
Yeah.
the manager and the manager's boss, the operations leader, they were trying to figure out, what does it look like to manage this team? Do we have a call every day to start the day? How do we measure performance if I can't physically sit next to them and hear how they're doing
Right.
on the phone? So a lot of those challenges created an opportunity for us to kind of step into the gap and say, guess what? We actually make tools that help with this, that would have been better even if you were stuck in the office, but especially now that you're stuck at home, um,
Right.
we can really help, because we want to build tools, and we are building tools for those managers to do their job better, to be coaches to their team, to engage the team and help that team shine, right?
Right.
And perform well and be recognized for it. So for us, and it feels a little bad saying it, I feel like, but business is doing really well for us right now,
Yeah.
despite all this stuff happening, just because we so aptly address those problems people are experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, with companies that you're working with, as they're experiencing the new reality or the evolved reality of working remote, and um, having teammates that are working even in support roles, where that's always been a challenge, because again, remembering that 20-seat call center that I was managing, it
Hmm.
was predicated on having people sit in fairly close quarters and being able to observe and patch in to hear calls and quality control them, and coach and develop, reward, recognize, coach and develop, that sort of thing. And so that was the natural part of the culture. Like I said, I couldn't imagine if those folks were all then remote, say working from home, or
Right.
that sort of thing. The technology pieces of it, and then just the overall workforce pieces of it, would present challenges that, again, you guys have a solution to help remedy.
Hmm.
um, Justin, do you see what, I guess, if you were to go into your crystal ball that none of us have, and
Yeah.
that'd be great if you knew, right to the pinpoint what's going to happen. But
Mhm.
what do you see as kind of, over these next year to 18 months with, like, your customers that you're
Mhm.
working with? Do you see them continuing to develop and maintain that remote environment, and what that means for your business? Or do you see them kind of reverting back to kind of pre-pandemic, hey, we're going to get back to everybody being in the office, and you know and that creates maybe a different opportunity for your company?
Yeah, no, definitely. So we're definitely already seeing people working back in the office. We have a new company that started last week, a supplement company just outside of Atlanta in Georgia, and
Yeah.
so they have a team of just 3 agents, I believe, and they're back in the office as of like a week or two ago, maybe. Um, they're still socially distancing and all that good stuff, but they're definitely not at home anymore. So I think we're going to see a range of situations. I definitely think there's likely going to be some companies that will just, the entire company will like this model and maybe have some type of hybrid, half of the week you work from home, half the week you don't, kind of thing.
Sure.
We have a lot of companies that a big part of their support team is actually already a third party, like, staffing company that uses work from home team members. So that will just continue, with
Sure.
kind of how that works. But I mean, really, we weren't intentionally building what we were building for work from home. It just also happens to be helpful for that.
Sure.
So from our perspective, and we're definitely experiencing a lot of growth now. We're a couple months from now, based on kind of our growth rate, we're going to be in a good position to raise our first round of venture capital financing for a seed round.
Yeah.
Um, because, we think the opportunity we have is a fairly large one, and we're kind of the mind of, kind of a go big or go home kind of situation.
Right.
And so, because we think it's a big opportunity, and in this category of software, the reality is if we don't do it, someone else will eventually.
Right.
So, a lot to be said for speed. So, we're going to be kind of tracking on that kind of technology startup path of raising multiple rounds of financing to, achieve scale as fast as possible and eventually go public. So,
Right.
the goal isn't to go public, but that's part of the path, right?
It's
Like,
part of the pathway. Right.
yeah, we want to empower every support team in the world to, have better departments and create better customer experiences. So that's kind of our path, and that's what we're seeing our customers go through, and as they figure out what post-pandemic world looks like for them.
Right. No doubt about it. Our guest today, Justin Winter, founder and CEO of Boostopia. That's boostopia.com, where you can go to learn more and look to get involved and connect with Justin and his company. You spoke about gaining kind of investing support for scalability. I want to ask a fun question for you, Justin. Walk me through this scenario for you. No strings attached. I give you $100 million. So you
Yeah.
don't need any of these investors anymore. Congratulations. You've
Yeah.
got $100 million. I roll up the Brinks truck and say, no strings attached.
There you go.
Justin, this is for you guys. Do what you will. All right. What would you do with that 100 million?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say I am personally more motivated by building something that has the largest potential impact in the world.
Sure.
I think in many ways, and this might sound like at risk of coming off arrogant, I think there's a lot easier ways to make a lot of money if you're primarily motivated by money, but a technology startup is definitely not the easiest way to do that. Like,
Right.
get a sales job, real estate agent, be sales at like a large company, and you can make $500,000 a year, right? Some of these different types of things, which is great, which is crazy, and that's a great opportunity. But
Yeah.
I would rather figure out how to create a multi-generational company that really runs after this mission, and largely affects the world in these positive ways, all the different stakeholders
Sure.
involved. So I think if you signed over the check to me here right now for $100 million, well, I wouldn't worry. I at some level I wouldn't worry as much about raising money, because obviously money is no longer an object. I would say in part the raising money isn't as much, well, it is in large part about raising money, but it's also about kind of building an A+ team, right? So our board, which I mean, there's kind of is no board right now because it's just 5 of us, but we're excited about not just getting someone who will write us a check for $2 million to invest in the company, but someone who has done that with other companies that are similar to us and help them walk that path to a similar place of where we want to go to. So having kind of those advisors and that counsel, and I'm a big believer in like, hey, like always be looking for how to equip yourself personally and in your organization with as much wisdom as you possibly can. Like I don't want to make a stupid mistake that someone else has made. So I'd rather spend 90% of my time researching and talking to others about the best next step, and have that last 10% be that next step versus the reverse. So, if I had $100 million, I probably would still go ask for a nominal amount of money from really smart people so they could be on our team to make sure we don't waste the $100 million
Right.
and, do stupid stuff. But, that would probably, be our path.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So Justin, as we get to, kind of wrapping up, I always like to ask this, and it's a little bit more serious, but I think this is really helps, our audience to hear this from people like you, which is, take us back to one of your toughest days in business, particularly if you want to, go back to your previous business or with Boostopia. Take me back to one of your toughest days. What did you do to overcome that? Because I think there's something inherent within all people that are successful that There's a certain level of belief and tenacity that comes into play to be
Right.
successful that you have to overcome. There's very few of us that just walk through open doors and we face no resistance. We just kind of waltz in and kind of tap dance our way to success. I think most of us, no matter how we look in the mirror, face some sort of obstacles, whether they're internal or external. And then, those that are successful overcome them some type of way.
Right.
So, unpack that for us. What was that for you?
Yeah.
And how you overcame, some of those tough days to continue to progress.
Right. Yeah. I think, there probably wasn't one major thing. There's been a large number of small to medium things that have been
Sure.
challenging. I mean, I think so. So I graduated, well, like I shared earlier, I didn't well, I walked and I finished school. I didn't technically get my degree because I was a couple of credits short, but so that was spring of 2010, right at the bottom of the financial crisis back then, right?
Yeah,
It's a horrible
absolutely.
job market to go into. And my wife and I, and we got married a couple months after we graduated. We moved down here to it was Wake Forest, North Carolina, which is about 30 minutes from where I'm sitting here in Durham. And she was starting the fall semester, getting her master's in counseling from Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary out there. And about 6 months in, she basically came down with this mysterious illness that we later found out to be chronic Lyme's disease. So she ended up having to pull up out of school because
Oh,
just physically she couldn't even go to school anymore. She could hardly
yeah.
hold a book to read it. And so she's been battling that for about a decade now. She's close to remission. Most people, when they see her now, because she's extremely extroverted and she's never met a stranger, they wouldn't know. But she's still in treatment and working on that. So we've had that to battle with, and so she hasn't been able to hold a full time job, and we haven't been able to start a family because of that. So that's been pretty hard. I remember maybe about a year into me working at the candle company there early on. We were not paying ourselves very much, and we didn't have a high standard of living. But I remember at one point driving home, and uh, Amanda had texted me asking if I could pick up like some milk or something on the way home. And
Right.
uh, I'm typically the one that kind of manages our personal finances, and my wife doesn't really like that. It's kind of stressful for her more naturally. And so
Right.
she
Right.
didn't know where our bank balance was, but we were negative, right? Like I literally had no money, and we were negative, and I was ashamed to tell her I can't buy milk, right?
Right.
And I was the sole breadwinner, right? And she was sitting there sick, and I was trying not to stress her with stuff. And so I remember pulling into the parking lot of Food Lion and then rummaging through my car to find spare change in the car,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that was definitely a huge low for me. I think it was, you know, it
Yeah.
was depressing. It was hard. It was just like, man, this is the bottom.
Right.
So, with things like that, are super challenging moments where I think you really have to understand what your why is and what your mission is, and do you believe in the course that you're taking? And even at times with Boostopia, as we've been getting this off the ground, which is kind of taken longer than we originally planned. I think the thing that I come back to is, my identity and who Justin is not 100% wrapped up in my vocational success, or if I've been interviewed on a podcast recently, right? Or if people say,
Right.
"Well, Justin, you're this smart business guy," because it feels good, right? When people think you're smart, right? And
Of
they want to
course.
learn from you. And what I've learned, kind of going through these highs and these lows, is, man, if that's all of what you're anchored to, man, it's not going to last forever, and you will be crushed, right? Because at some
Right.
point, really, that's not going to be there. So, for me, my personal faith in my identity and who God says I am is a big part of my personal motivator, and because of that, I care more about serving Him well, making an impact, some of these societal things that I've come to desire more than being able to spend a lot of money on a really nice car, right?
Right.
Um, so so that's what I go back to with Boostopia or whatever it is. It's like, even if it's a hard time, is is what I'm working on, do I still fundamentally believe that the vision we have is worth the struggle? And because maybe the answer is no. I don't. I've learned more about this thing, and I have more
Right.
information that maybe this is not the right path. But do I have more information, and am I as excited as ever? But we're just in a challenging period, right? Those are two
Yes.
very different places. So,
Exactly.
when I've hit that with Boostopia, it's like, man, you know what? I got friends making way better money with way less stress doing all this other stuff. Let me just go do that, right?
Right. Right.
But I come back to it, and it's like, you know what? But hey, I'm not in it for the short term money. I'd rather build this thing long term. I'd rather be humbled now, the process, be patient with it, right? And then that's how I'm able to get to that next step and just show up another day, just like when I was selling knives, right? I just need to keep showing up. I believe in the vision, the mission, and kind of trust God for the future. That the stuff that I can't predict, right?
Right.
Pandemic, right? I mean, I had no idea, but I'm along for the ride.
There you
just
go.
just like you, just like everyone listening to this right now, man. We're
Yeah.
holding on, doing the
We're
best.
in. Exactly. We're in on it. And two things that jump out with what you said, Justin. One is belief, that you continue to have to believe. I have a very I was chuckling to myself because I have a very similar story about the grocery store and not having the money. I'll share it with you. I've shared it with the MYB community before, and I've
Right.
shared it on social media. But I'll have to share that with you sometimes because I have an
Yeah.
eerily similar story. I took a different pathway with that than you did. You were much more scrupulous than I was at that time. Although I was fortunate and blessed to be able to, kind of, make up for what I ended up doing,
Mhm.
which was not violent or anything like to that nature, but was something that would be in violation that I was fortunate to able to make up. But yeah,
Yeah.
I was chuckling to myself when you said that. So belief is one thing, and then the willingness to carry forward with that belief is kind of the second thing. So it's one thing to believe; it's another thing to take the action. Then
Yeah.
that belief is then personified
Hmm.
and moving forward. And that's not a difficult thing, MYB, to listen to what, when Justin says that, because, you all face, obstacles and challenges. And Justin said it, exactly right. It's easy to go and stop and say, hey, I want to make more money. And, particularly when you don't have money, when you're looking for change in your car, you're
Yeah.
in a very serious situation. And it's easy to say, you know what, tomorrow I'm gonna go fill out some applications and I'm gonna put my dream on the shelf and go forward there. And I think that many of you have faced that, or you're facing that decision right now. For those of you that unfortunately are out of work and you're looking at what you're going to do next, and so that belief, like Justin's talking about, is so critical. Even in the face of health, dealing with health with loved ones and maybe your own kind of personal situations, continue to have that belief, because each day creates as another opportunity for us, and you just never know what that next day is going to do if you hang in there. And so, easier said than done. And yeah, it's easy for us, Justin and I, to say on the podcast and you listen to it and say, yeah, hang in there. But I'm just telling you, Justin and I are real people, and we both have had to go through that, and many of you have as well. So thank you for sharing that, Justin.
Yeah.
um, Last thing, what are one or two best practices that have worked for you that you would like to share with the audience that you think could work for the rest of us? Just,
Yeah.
best practices for yourself that you kind of live by, that, again, have, you found success in, that you think, other people will as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think couple things that come to mind. One of the things that I was exposed to fairly early on, uh, I think right after college, was there's kind of this idea, and I don't remember where I found it from, so it's not an original thought, but um, it's this concept of um, optimize, automate, and outsource everything. So optimize, automate, and outsource. So that might seem like a weird response to the question
No,
initially,
no, I'm with you.
but yeah. So no, but the concept is like everything that you're, as for the audience who's listening to this, like everything that you're doing now, your side hustle or your full-time hustle or your salaried or hourly job, or you're flipping stuff on Craigslist or eBay or Goat or whatever. um, you know you're putting in a certain amount of time and effort and work to get a certain amount of a result, like some type of money, right? Probably.
Yeah.
So um, everything you do is a process, right? It's checking that website, it's going to garage sales, it's being a Lyft driver, it's doing that consulting, or whatever it is, right? And uh, if you can, step one, think about how you can optimize or improve that process. Is it something that takes 10 steps for you to do that you can get down to 2 steps, right? Okay,
Right.
start there, right? And then once you've done about as much as you can there on thinking about the process and just improving the number of steps and things you kind of got going on to
Yeah.
do some part of the work that you have, the next step is, well, can you automate it, right? Is there some free or very inexpensive software tool or way to create leverage with your time? So,
Sure.
a tool like Zapier is a common one. Can you, if you're getting, if you're a photographer and that's your side hustle, right? Like, can you set up your Squarespace website to where, when someone fills out the form to contact you, it automatically shoots their information over to this other system, so you don't have to copy and paste it every single time, right?
Right.
What's that leverage? And then outsource, right? So a big mistake people make is they go directly to phase number 3 to outsource. They're doing something, they got a process, they got something going on, and they say, all right, well, man, I need more time, so what are my options? What do I do? Well, I gotta go hire somebody, right? Bad news bears, right?
Right.
Because and not that there isn't a time and place to hire people, but to take care of a process or something that's going on, if it's not inherently adding value, and basically software can do it, or you can just have a better process, that's free, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen so many situations in customer support directly and just in many other areas where you kind of walk in and it's like, from that outside perspective, you're like, man, you spend a whole ton of time doing this one thing over here. Why do you do that? And it's like, well, that's just how we've always done it, right? Or this employee, like, what are they doing with all their time? It's like, oh, well, you could pay like $50 a month for a piece of software that would do the exact same thing. And they're like, what? This is crazy. So I think the big challenge that everyone listening to this has, who isn't in my position of having a full-time company that is at least doing enough to, you know, feed you and your family,
Right.
you're in a challenge of needing to create leverage, which scales the results from your effort. If you solve that problem, that side hustle becomes a full-time hustle,
There you
right?
go.
That full-time hustle where you're making minimum wage becomes you're making 6 figures a year doing 40 hours a week, right? So it's
Right.
about analyzing and understanding what are the activities in my business? How can I create leverage and scale? Can I automatically reply to that person? Can I do these things before getting to hire part-time people, freelancers, or another employee to do that work? And then the reality is, and we see this just like you've seen this, Ron, in customer support situations. The reality
Yeah.
is people don't like doing repetitive stuff where they feel like they're a cog in the wheel anyway, right?
Right.
They like
Exactly.
stuff that's engaging, where they feel like they're adding value. So it's like, let's all use all this insane amount of technology that's available to us, and have computers do what computers are good at, so that frees up time and resources to invest
Yeah.
in people to do what people are good at, right? When that makes sense. So I think that philosophy about kind of seeing the world through that lens has been instrumental for me, and the stuff that I've been doing, to think about how to get to that next step from wherever I'm sitting here today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Justin, I can't thank you enough, man, for sharing, those nuggets with all of us. Very, very grassroots, very organic, way in which you shared that. Hopefully MYB, you're taking notes with that, and that message helps and resonates with you as you go forward, even during, these unprecedented times with the pandemic, and as we transition from that into whatever reality that sets in post pandemic. that you can go back and channel these words or wisdoms here from our guest today, Justin Winter, founder and CEO of Boostopia. That's boostopia.com. How can people connect with you, Justin, if if they got more, either additional questions or they like to get involved with your business, as a resource? How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually are going to be hiring pretty soon. We have a job opening up on the website. If you go to boostopia.com, Boostopia, there's a careers link in the footer, and you can see the available opportunities we have. So that's one place to check that out. If you have a customer service or operations background in particular, we're going to be hiring in that area. For the company, Twitter and LinkedIn, you can kind of easily find us there for kind of that personal connection. At JC Winter on Twitter and Instagram, I believe is the same.
Yeah,
Or you can try pinging me on Facebook as well. I basically use the same profile photo everywhere. So
sure.
if you go to my personal website, iamjustinwinter.com, and see that profile photo, you can basically see on any of the other places. But yeah, would love to connect anyone. If this was helpful in any way, feel free to shout me out and say, hey, I'd love to know that. And if I can be helpful in any way to you personally with any recommendations or anything like that, when in doubt, and this is just a good life lesson that I live by, is when in doubt, reach out and ask, right?
Right.
Like, I think it's easy. Like, I listen to a ton of podcasts, and I listen to people, I'm like, oh my gosh, man, they're so stinking smart. Man, they're
Yeah.
just up on this pedestal. And I find when I kind of get over that and I ping them, they're super generous, and they
Yeah.
typically
Just
reply,
great.
right?
Yeah. Great guys
So
and girls. Right.
I might be getting myself in trouble because I'm gonna get 1,000 messages now. But everyone else listening to this is not gonna do it. So why don't you go ahead and shoot me a message on any of those channels? I just say, hey, I'd be more than happy to say hi and be helpful if I can.
Yep, absolutely. And MYB, as you do that, be sure to let Justin know that you heard him right here on the Minding Your
Absolutely.
Business podcast, for sure. So, Justin, listen, I know you're extremely busy. You've got a lot going on, man. Best wishes to you and your family. Again, thank you for your comments throughout this podcast, and particularly earlier as it relates to the current unfortunate environment. And again, stay safe and keep doing your thing, man. Definitely appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Ron. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Listen, guys, again, subscribe 5 star on Apple, as well as subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And that was our guest today, Justin Winter, founder and CEO with Boostopia at boostopia.com. Yeah, listen, make sure you connect with them. Like Justin said, again, probably about 80 to 90% of people aren't going to do it. You're going to listen to this podcast, you're going to go on and do whatever you're going to do, and then there's going to be the people that do. All right. So which one of those do you want to be? And you just never know what a connection can bring. And so definitely make sure that you do that. BrandPod, go to www.brandyourpod.com. I want to help you launch your own podcast. Again, in this environment, your audience may not all be on your social media timeline. They may be all around, and you may be missing out on them, and they're missing out on you. So now's the time to launch your podcast. I want to help you do that. Go to brandyourpod.com. Something else, MYB, I had this idea here recently. I'm building a directory of businesses, and Justin will be a part of this. I want to have him with his business information as a part of this, but I'm building a Minding Your Business directory, because I want everyone in the audience, particularly for those that have been guests on the podcast. I want to make sure that you as the MYB audience can connect with them, and you've got one source. You don't have to go sorting through all the episodes as we keep adding episodes. I want you, when you want to connect with Justin, I want you to be able to go to the site and find him in a directory and get right to his business. And so I'm building a directory. It'll be free for those who have been guests on the podcast. If you haven't been a guest on the podcast, of course, you can schedule to do that. But there'll be a fee for that for those folks that haven't been guests on the podcast. But everyone that has been a guest on the podcast, I want to be able to have their business information in a directory that's very simple, easy to access, mobile or on the website. So be looking out for that. I'm gonna put that in the show notes. There'll be a form. I'll send that out to Justin and some others. It'd be just a short form. If there, anybody that has affiliate links, anybody that has offers you like to offer to the community exclusively, we want to make sure that we have a very streamlined place for you to be able to get that information and be able to get involved. Because some of you have reached out to me about people who've been in episodes either coming up in the future or in past episodes. And I don't want you to have to go and scroll through a bunch of stuff to try to find people. I want to make that as efficient for you as possible. So, today's guest will be a part of that, of course, and then, previous guests. So I want to have that directory available to you. So be looking out for that. And again, the link for the form, if you have a business or organization, doesn't matter at what point that you're at. If you're live and you want to be part of this directory, be sure to click on the link again in the show notes. Send your information. It's basically just name, company, whatever links you want to share, just a quick blurb. And I want to have that accessible on the website, which is themybpodcast.com. That's where you need to go to listen to all episodes and, again, get more information about the MYB community. Listen, this has been phenomenal. Thank you all so much. For those that are, whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to the podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, thank you so much. It means a lot to me when you're listening. These are challenge times. I encourage you to not be glued to your seat watching the news so much. Get out, get some sun, enjoy your friends and family, and live life. And know that all of us are out living lives that are as human beings, no matter how we look. And when you come across, give a smile and some warm positive vibes to everybody that you come across, and you'll find that life will be just a little bit easier for us all to navigate. So, Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast, go be great.